This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Richard Nta in Nairobi. Here's what's ahead. A court in Myanmar jails Aung San Suu Kyi for 4 years for inciting dissent and breaching COVID rules. South Africa prepares its hospitals for Omicron admissions as scientists try to establish how contagious and harmful the variant is. Olaf Scholz is one step closer to taking the helm as Germany's chancellor. Once again, welcome to The World Today. Let's begin in Myanmar, where a court there has sentenced ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 4 years in prison. Military spokesman Zaw Min Tun said former President Win Myint has also been sentenced to 4 years on the same charges. 76-year-old Suu Kyi has been detained since the generals ousted her government in the early hours of February the 1st. Our correspondent Martin Lowe has more from Bangkok.
This is what Ms. Suu Kyi's supporters feared but also expected. They claim these proceedings are baseless and are simply a mechanism to try to end her political career in Myanmar. The military junta, however, insists that the country's former de facto leader has been given due process by an independent court. Now, she's been sentenced to 4 years in prison for inciting dissent against the military and also breaching rules on COVID-19. Now, these are just the first of a number of expected rulings. In fact, Ms. Suu Kyi faces around a dozen charges in total alleging corruption and violating state security laws. The country's president, Win Myint, has also been jailed for 4 years on similar charges. We believe at the moment is that both Ms. Suu Kyi and the former president won't be taken to prison straight away. They've actually been detained by the military since that coup on February the 1st in a form of house arrest, and we believe they are both going to continue there while there are still further proceedings pending.
CGTN's Joy Karuki Juma now traces Aung Suu Kyi's troubled journey in Myanmar politics.
76-year-old Aung San Suu Kyi came into the limelight in 1988. There were claims of mass slaughter of those who were protesting against what they saw as a brutal and unresponsive rule of the military strongman U Win in Myanmar. This led her to speak out against him and to begin a non-violent struggle for democracy and human rights. Suu Kyi was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991 for her work in bringing democracy to Myanmar. But at the time, she had been sentenced to nearly 15 years in detention at the hands of the military between 1989 and 2010. Suu Kyi delivered her Nobel Peace Prize speech 21 years after winning the award. In 2015, her party, the National League for Democracy, won a landslide victory, but she was prevented from becoming president. At the time, the rules excluded those with foreign national children from holding office. Suu Kyi is married to a British scholar, and together they have 2 children. Suu Kyi has held multiple government posts from 2016, including that of state councillor, which essentially made her the de facto leader. In 2017, her reputation abroad was severely damaged by the way she handled the Rohingya crisis.
I don't know why people say that I've been silent. I haven't been silent.
Good morning, Ms. Suu Kyi. Are you defending the indefensible?
In 2019, Suu Kyi appeared at the UN International Court of Justice to defend her country against accusations of genocide.
We condemn all human rights violations and unlawful violence. We are committed to the restoration of peace, stability, and rule of law throughout the state.
In February 2021, the democracy icon was sidelined when the military seized power. Joy Kiruki Juma, CGTN.
And in other news, German lawmakers are finalizing a deal that's expected to lead to a new government. 2 out of the 3 parties in the coalition have approved the agreement. A third is expected to sign off on Monday. Never before has a 3-party alliance governed the country. As Natalie Carney reports from Munich, it will be a difficult road ahead.
At a party congress on Sunday, members of the Free Democratic Party, the smallest party in Germany's new governing coalition, voted on a 177-page coalition treaty. On Saturday, 98.9% of members of the Social Democrats, the largest party in the coalition, voted in favor of the treaty that would see the party's leader, Olaf Scholz, become the country's new chancellor. The third party in the coalition, the Greens, have put the vote to its members by ballot, the results of which are expected on Monday. This coalition treaty is the result of 2 months of negotiations between the parties and outlines their government plans for Europe's biggest economy. Pending approval from the Greens, the agreement could be signed as early as Tuesday, placing Angela Merkel's Christian Democratic Union in opposition for the first time in 16 years. Then on Wednesday, the Bundestag, Germany's federal parliament, is expected to approve Olaf Scholz as the country's next chancellor, officially ending the Merkel era. Never before has Germany been ruled by a 3-party coalition, which could prove problematic down the road. Yet there is a certain air of optimism that these 3 parties' differing positions could bring about the change that many Germans have been yearning for. Natalie Carney for CGTN in Munich.
Well, Omicron continues to spread, now found in at least 40 countries. But the U.S.'s top pandemic advisor says the variant seems to be less dangerous than Delta. Dr. Anthony Fauci cautioned scientists still need more information. Omicron has now spread to 1/3 of American states, but it's the Delta variant that is still driving hospitalizations. Results are expected within weeks to whether Omicron is resistant to vaccines. The U.S. is among many countries that have imposed travel bans from Southern Africa to try to stem the variant spread. South Africa's president says the country is preparing its hospitals for more admissions as the Omicron variant drives a 4th wave of COVID-19 cases. Cyril Ramaphosa said Omicron appeared to be dominating new cases in most of the country and urged more people to get vaccinated. He said the government would review the state of the pandemic and make decisions on further measures. Omicron was first detected in Southern Africa last month and has triggered global alarm. But scientists say it's not yet clear if it's more contagious and harmful than other variants. Well, dozens of countries, including China and Russia, have not been invited to the Summit for Democracy organized by the United States. But China's Taiwan region has, and it's been invited to that meeting, and China says this is a blatant violation of the One China principle. Meanwhile, a Chinese institute has issued a report criticizing democracy in the U.S. Wang Haiyang has the details.
10 questions are put forward to challenge American-style democracy in a report released on Monday by the Chongyang Institute for Financial Studies, Renmin University of China. The first question is whether U.S. democracy is for the majority. The report says there has been a gradual transformation of American political behavior in recent years. The result is frequent situations in which a few people seize power and decide election results. Such a transformation is contrary to the word democracy, which the report says means that people are the masters of the country. The report says at present, the U.S. is experiencing threats to its system of checks and balances, and it doubts whether the current democracy can improve Americans' well-being. Statistics show by the end of 2020, more than 50 million Americans faced food insecurity, a nearly 50% increase from 2019. More than 220,000 people were homeless, while the wealth gap widened. The report also raises the question of whether or not U.S. democracy can secure freedom or human rights. Every year, more than 30,000 people are killed in gun violence. The numbers of COVID infections and deaths are the highest in the world. Hate crimes against Asians increased by 150% in 2020. The report claims the current American-style democracy leads to division of people and system failure, such as the infighting between the 2 main political parties. According to the report, American democracy are also creating turmoil abroad. It failed to bring peace and development in Afghanistan, Yemen, and Iraq. With military interventions, the U.S. has been undermining international order in the name of democracy. The Chongyang Institute hopes the report could help the U.S. reflect on the defects on its own system and help the world fully understand democracy and promote shared values for all humankind. Wang Haiyang, CGTN.
The U.S. Supreme Court plays a key role in U.S. democracy, but it may be losing public trust. A Gallup poll in September found that 54% of respondents trusted the judicial branch of government headed by the Supreme Court, and that's down from 76 points in 2009. And in a Quinnipiac poll last month, more than 6 out of 10 of respondents believe the Supreme Court was motivated primarily by politics. Only 32% said its rulings were based on the law. Although the court now has a conservative majority, more than half of Republicans believed it was driven mostly by politics. 67% of Democrats and 62% of independents had the same view. Well, the United States is facing its highest inflation in 30 years. The Consumer Price Index, which measures prices paid by the typical consumer, is up more than 6%, and that's the fastest increase since 1990. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that food prices jumped by 5% over the last year, and energy shot up 30%. That means overall inflation has been running well above the Fed's 2% goal for quite a while. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said inflation can no longer be categorized as short-term.
I'm ready to retire the word transitory. I can agree that that hasn't been an apt description of what we're dealing with. I think the pandemic has contributed in very important ways to the inflation problem that we're facing.
The Solomon Islands Prime Minister is facing a motion of no confidence after anti-government riots last month. Boats have been banned from entering the harbor in the capital, Honiara. More than 200 police and soldiers from Australia, Fiji, New Zealand, and Papua New Guinea, they all are on alert. There are fears the vote could trigger another outbreak of violence. The motion is not expected to gain enough support from MPs to pass. Well, I guess that'll do it for this edition of The World Today. Thanks for watching. Up next is Africa Live. Stay tuned and don't go away on CGTN.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
Tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
the front line. Within clear view of this front line position.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Gambia's President Adama Barrow comfortably wins re-election. Tunisia's General Labor Union calls for early polls. And the UN says more than 700,000 people in South Sudan are living in IDP camps due to flooding. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. Ghana's climate activists push for sustainable alternative to charcoal and firewood use. And in sports, we take a look at how an amputee uses golf to deal with trauma and anxiety. Well, once again, welcome to Africa Live. Great to have you along with us for this hour. Let's begin in the Gambia. We start in the Gambia, where President Adama Barrow has won a second term in the presidential elections, with thousands of his supporters celebrating in the streets of Banjul. His opponents disrupted and disputed the results announced late Sunday. President Barrow won with 53% of the votes, defeating his rival Osanoa Darboa, who garnered 28% of the votes. In his speech, he urged Gambians to respect the supporters of his opponents in the free, fair, and transparent elections. The international observers from ECOWAS had earlier called on all Gambians to accept the election results in good faith. The polls are the first to be held since the former president, Yahya Jammeh, fled to exile in 2016.
Fellow Gambians, residents and friends of the Gambia, I address you today with a great sense of joy and humility. Now that the Independent Electoral Commission, IEC, has declared me, Adama Barrow, candidate for the National People's Party, NPP, the winner of the 4 December 2021 presidential election. I urge all my supporters to celebrate the victory in a civil manner, bearing in mind that those who opted to support other candidates are equally Gambians, and their right to do so must always be respected.
Well, we have with us S.A. Nta, a political science lecturer at the University of Gambia. He joins us live via Zoom from the Gambian capital, Banjul. S.A., welcome to Africa Live. Thank you for taking time to speak to us. Let me begin by asking you, talk to us about the comfortable win for a second term. What does this say about what President Adama Barrow has achieved for the country for his first term in office?
Well, thank you for having me. First and foremost, the current president, Adama Barrow, shouldn't have any business to do in this election. Remember, in 2016, he was elected to lead a transitional government for 3 years, which he remained on, and then he decided to go for 5 years, and also that he's supposed to embark on reforms, including legal and institutional reforms, including to have a new constitution, a new electoral law, legal frameworks that everybody complained that under the Jammeh regime they were bad, and then under him we were expected to have these reforms in place. We are also expected to have security sector reform. We're also expected to have civil service reforms and a lot of other institutional reforms that we are not done. So the government, instead of being a transitional government, decided to entrench itself in power, led by Barrow himself. So coming to this election, going by the promise he made in 2016, one wouldn't say, no one can say that he has achieved any of those promises, except that, a financial commission was established, which, revealed its reports, but then, injustice or selective treatment was done. Also, the Truth Commission is completed. It has submitted its reports, and we don't know how that is going to be implemented yet. But then, so in terms of the promises that he made to Gambians in 2016, nothing of that has been achieved. Well, Gambians voted for various reasons. One include, because of infrastructural development that Barrow focused on more, including few roads and few bridges that he, constructed in the country since he came in 2016. So these are things that some voters will appeal to, that okay, he has done this, that, and that. Infrastructure is this, even though these infrastructural developments are not many, they're not everywhere, but then in certain parts of the country, they are there for the first time. Those people are receiving such infrastructural development. So they use that as an excuse to say, okay, Barrow deserves our vote. But then secondly, also has to do with the ethno-linguistic dimension of it. Gambian politics has been reduced to ethnic census, one can say. That a lot of people, if you talk to a lot of people, will say, well, Barrow is not the option. But then, his opponent will say, no, Dabo is not also the option. So it is a tribal card that has been used by Barrow and his party. And it has really worked for them because, a lot of the other tribes, have been used to say that, look, the Mandinka ethnic group where Ousainou Darboe is from, when they come to power, they will send you all out of the country. And then, so people tend to believe that, look, this is a fight against, between the Mandinka ethnic group and other ethnic groups. In fact, his religious advisor was quoted as saying on Monday, last week Monday, certainly before the closure of campaign, that, vote for Adama Barrow so that the other ethnic groups can survive in the country. So this election was not an election to vote for Barrow, but it was an election to reject Ousainou Darboe and his United Democratic Party, who have been perceived by Barrow and his party members or his party supporters as, a tribal party, which is really dangerous for the country as we head towards consolidating our democracy.
All right, compelling points that you've made there, Essay. Let me zero in on what you've just said and pick it apart a little bit. You said he's achieved nothing since 2016. What would you say is his biggest challenge in this second term going forward? Can you briefly talk to us about that?
See, I wouldn't say he has not achieved anything. Like I said earlier on, in terms of infrastructural development, few roads and few bridges that he's built is seen by some people as an achievement, and one wouldn't dispute that as well. But then, people also see Barrow as that harmless person compared to Yahya Jammeh, who was arresting and torturing people. You understand? So they see him as that harmless and peaceful guy. But then, coming to this term, what I was saying is that, all the promises that he made, he was supposed to be a transitional president. He was supposed to embark on reforms, institutional legal reforms, and he has failed in delivering these to Gambian people. But coming to the second term, Gambians have been crying of corruption in the country since Barrow came to power. This is one of the most fundamental challenges that Barrow has been facing, and he did little or nothing, absolutely nothing, to address corruption in the country. Coming to the second term, Gambians are now not looking at him as a transitional president. They're looking at him as an executive president who is supposed to deliver the developments that he has promised. It's not only the infrastructure, but we have healthcare problems. We have crisis in education sector, food. The living cost of Gambians are getting, is just getting high in this country. Unemployment rate, a terrible economic situation. These are things that Gambians will expect the Barrow government to address in the second term. But more importantly, the draft constitution that was rejected in Parliament, thanks to Barrow and his supporters in Parliament, also the security sector reform that is not moving anywhere. Also, the civil service reform that has not even been started yet, one can say. These are things that Gambians will expect Barrow to come and change. The reforms will have to come to life again, including institutional and constitutional or legal reforms that will guarantee the fundamental rights and liberties of the Gambian people. We're not saying that under Barrow, these freedoms of movement, association, and all that, civil and political rights have not. Of course, they have been respected compared to the Jammeh era. There's a degree of there have been improvement in terms of media freedom here.
All right.
So we expect these things to continue.
Essay and Jerry, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for keeping us up to date with the very latest over there. Well, there you have it. President Barrow wins second term in office. Now, in other news, Tunisia's powerful General Labor Union, UGTT, is calling for early elections and has expressed concern about President Kais Saied's failure to announce a roadmap for political reforms. On the 25th of July, the Tunisian president dismissed the government and suspended parliament and assumed executive authority. Adnan Shwashi reports.
Thousands of unionists gathered near the government office in downtown Tunis. The Secretary General of the powerful UGTT union said that the National Workers' Organization supported the moves of the head of state, who had promised to improve the situation in the country.
We backed the president's exceptional measures, thinking there would be a new start from the country, away from the interests of political parties. His moves were supposed to turn the page on 10 years of uncertainty and instability. We supported the president in completing the democratic transition before achieving the inclusive economic takeoff, but this has not happened yet.
The labor union's leadership announced that it will no longer accept President Kais Saied's unilateral decisions. Protesters have been urging the president to outline his political, economic and social project as soon as possible.
We still believe that the president's steps taken on July 25th could be the way out from the tunnel that the country has been stuck in, provided they're accompanied by a clear roadmap with a specific timeline. We also need to set the country's priorities with concrete measures to end this state of hesitation and mystery and to open the door for a new Tunisia.
President Saied has insisted that Tunisia's institutions are still in place. He warned against any attempt to implode the state from within. The head of state stressed that he is working while fully complying with law and the country's constitution.
The state and the sovereignty of the Tunisian people, as well as their choices and demands, are not for sale. The deadlines expected by Tunisians will be announced in the coming days.
Since July 25th, President Saied has refused to meet with the labor union's leader. He has also rejected calls for dialogue with political parties. The head of state has instead ordered the creation of digital platforms to allow Tunisians, especially young people, to participate in what he views as a real national dialogue. Several political parties have denounced the president's speech, which many believe is dividing the country. Civil society organizations and activists will escalate protests to put an end to the state of emergency. People are calling for the resumption of the constitutional and democratic process in Tunisia. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
South Africa's president says the country is preparing its hospitals for more admissions as the Omicron variant drives a fourth wave of COVID-19 cases. Cyril Ramaphosa said Omicron appeared to be dominating new cases in most of the country and urged more people to get vaccinated. He said the government would review the state of the pandemic and make decisions on further measures. Omicron was first detected in southern Africa last month and has triggered global alarm. But scientists say it's not yet clear if it is more contagious and harmful than other variants. The Nigerian government has faulted the travel ban imposed by the UK on Nigeria and other African countries. Authorities say the country will not reciprocate. Rather, its travel protocol has been revised as a way to manage the risk of spreading the new COVID-19 variant of concern. Now, Philly Haza reports from Abuja. Let's take a look.
Nigeria's Health Minister Osagi Hanire says rather than place a ban and restrict Nigerian flights coming into the UK should focus more on collaboration rather than shutting borders, as suggested by the WHO. The UK government placed a travel ban on Nigeria that will take effect from Monday after announcing that it found 21 cases of the Omicron variant linked to the African nation. But Nigeria's health minister says the Omicron strain could not yet be declared as a deadly strain because no deaths had so far been recorded across the world. As such, the government has ruled out the possibility of restricting foreign travelers from visiting Nigeria. Instead, it has revisited the country's international travel protocol. Passengers arriving in Nigeria will henceforth be required to provide the results of a COVID-19 PCR test done within 48 hours before departure and another test 2 days after arrival. The measure is in response to the report of 3 cases of the Omicron variant found in Nigeria, as announced by the country's Center for Disease Control last week. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Well, China has today donated an additional 500,000 Sinopharm vaccines to Somalia. The Horn of Africa nation applauded China's efforts to help combat COVID-19 in the country. In April this year, China was the first country to donate over 200,000 doses of vaccines to Somalia. President Xi Jinping's government this year pledged to provide about 2 billion COVID-19 vaccines to needy countries. About 1.85 billion doses have so far been donated to over 120 countries and international organizations. The nation has donated more vaccines than any other country on the globe. You are watching Africa Live. The news continues. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories. Here's what's ahead. The UN says more than 700,000 people in South Sudan are living in IDP camps due to flooding. Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Gunmen have killed 12 soldiers and wounded 8 in a clash in southwestern Niger near the border with Burkina Faso. The attack is part of a wider wave of violence by groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State that have swept across West Africa's Sahel region since 2017. Thousands of civilians have been killed there and millions displaced. The United Nations says the current floods in South Sudan have displaced 1 in 15 people. More than 700,000 people are living in internally displaced persons camps due to flooding. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
In Bentiu town in the north of the country, fresh floods at the weekend cut off the main road linking the airport, town and a base for the United Nations mission in South Sudan. Many are now trapped as flooding has made movement impossible for community members and peacekeepers. This is the 3rd year in a row that most parts of South Sudan are flooding. There are spikes in cases of malaria, snake bites and diarrhea, according to Doctors Without Borders. Women, the elderly and children are the most affected.
Climate crisis can be tackled only at a global level, only with the spirit of solidarity, because the people who are paying the heaviest price do not have much responsibility as a polluter. And for this reason, to go through some of the challenges that they are facing, they need help, they need support, and they need the mechanism of international solidarity.
The floods on the White Nile are due to relentless rains for 3 consecutive years. South Sudan's government says there is also high water on the Blue Nile, which is blocking the flow of water from the White Nile into the Nile River. Crops and some livestock have been washed away. The government says pollution from oil fields is killing the remaining livestock. The United Nations World Food Program says more than 60% of the population now faces an acute food shortage. The WFP says it now needs more funds to provide food assistance to the needy people. The government is also urging aid workers to provide the much needed humanitarian assistance to those displaced. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
The president of the Democratic Republic of Congo has replaced the board chairman of the state-owned mining company and the entire board over allegations of embezzlement of millions of dollars. President Felix Tshisekedi replaced Albert Yuma and his subordinates after a recent report revealed allegations of corruption in the state-owned mining firm. CGTN's Chris Ochabaringa has more from Kinshasa.
President Felix Tshisekedi announced the replacement of senior officials at the state-owned mining firm Gécamines after allegations emerged that millions of dollars had gone missing. Its former chairman, Albert Yuma, was implicated in a case in which a company where he has shares was accused of embezzling $43 million. But Mr. Yuma has dismissed the accusation as lies fabricated by foreigners seeking to tarnish his reputation. He's a wealthy businessman with close links to former President Joseph Kabila. President Tshisekedi has replaced him with an administrator called Alphonse Caputo Kalubi. The replacement is the president's latest move of reforming the country's mining sector that has had many cases of corruption. Gécamines controls the DRC's production of copper and cobalt, a key component used in making rechargeable batteries for electric vehicles. Chris Sochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Cape Town, which is regarded as one of the greenest cities in the world, says it's committed to green procurement in its operations and projects. It wants to lead by example by using renewable energy in all its buildings, vehicles, and other infrastructure. Cape Town eventually wants to make renewable energy affordable and accessible to all its citizens as it works towards zero carbon city-owned buildings by 2030. Renee Del Carme has more.
Cape Town authorities say they are determined to encourage local companies and residents to use solar and wind power as the city starts moving away from fossil fuel-based energy.
And one of the key elements of our vision going forward for the energy sector is that the city leads by example, and certainly within the electricity space, it's critical that our buildings reflect our vision and our focus towards ensuring net zero carbon status.
Cape Town hopes to have at least 10% of homes using solar power and around 10% of the city's energy consumption coming from renewable sources.
This building is a 5-star green building, and not only does it feature the latest in terms of energy saving, in terms of lighting, insulation, etc., but also the solar panels on the roof, which contributes to reducing the demand for external electricity supplies.
The city of Cape Town has also spent millions of rands on cycling lanes in its bid to promote non-motorized transport such as cycling. This is all part of its ambitious plan to reduce carbon emissions.
We'd certainly like to create an enabling environment for that. And that includes the use of cycling or pedestrian lanes, and the idea is to put them up in such a way that it improves quality of life and does it sustainably and safely. When it comes to vehicles, naturally the focus is on public transportation, particularly buses, and we would like to expand our current bus fleet, either through the use of hydrogen or electric buses, potentially even a combination of diesel as well as natural gas.
All Cape Town's traffic lights and over a third of its street lights have been retrofitted with energy-efficient LED lamps. And the city has so far purchased 5 electric vehicles and received a donation of electric vehicle charging stations from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization.
The transition to electric vehicles presents many opportunities. The lessons we'll learn from this donation and the partnership with UNIDO will be important in helping us reach our carbon neutral goals and developing climate resilience for the benefit of all our residents.
City officials say there's an open invitation for international investors to come and invest in Cape Town's thriving green economy. Renee Del Carme, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, more news to come on Africa Live. Stay tuned. Here's what's ahead. South Africans hold beach protests against plans by Royal Dutch Shell Oil for exploration. And Ghanaian climate activists push for sustainable alternative to charcoal and firewood use.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. In South Africa, about 1,000 environmental enthusiasts took to the beaches of Port Edward on Sunday to protest against the Royal Dutch Shell's plan to do seismic oil exploration in the Wild Coast. The environmentalists are saying the activity is a threat to marine life in the vital whale breeding grounds along the eastern coastal belt of South Africa. On Friday, a South African court dismissed an application filed by the environmentalists, rejecting the application, deeming the so-called threat to marine life as unproven. The locals in the area fear the seismic blasting during the operation will kill the fish, which they depend on for living. The Royal Dutch, on the other hand, say the exploration has regulatory approval and will significantly boost the country's energy security.
We don't want it here because our families live off this ocean. They fish crayfish amongst other things here and sell it to get money so they can feed their families because there are no jobs.
I don't want them to operate here because if they do, we won't be able to fish here. All these sea creatures will die or we won't catch anything. They shouldn't work here. What are we going to eat? It should stop.
Chinese private investment in Uganda is growing while Westerners are losing appetite to put money to work in the country. President Yoweri Museveni is pledging to step up efforts to tackle corruption, which has made slow progress. Museveni says Uganda is working to sign a number of deals with Chinese private lenders in sectors from agro and fertilizer processing, minerals and processing, or textiles. Let's take a look.
I think it is partly the fault of their governments, because their governments don't guide them, don't facilitate them, because like I think in China they put in place some monies in the banks. I think they are called something which help Chinese companies once they get opportunities abroad. I think it is something like that with the Chinese. Now, why the Western governments don't do that, I don't know why. Maybe they didn't care about us. They didn't care about investing in Africa. So, of course, China is heavily populated, and I'm sure with a population which is educated now, they are looking for opportunities. So I think it is a combination of the ideology and the interest of people who want opportunities. But also the ideology is the government encourages them, I think encourages their private companies, while the Western governments are lecturing us. You find somebody lecturing Yoweri Museveni, it's really madness. What are you telling me? What I don't know? So there is that disconnection between us and the Western systems.
In spite of rapid urbanization in Ghana, many people still rely on firewood and charcoal for cooking instead of cleaner energy sources like LPG. Environmentalists are concerned about the effect of this, not just on the health of people, but also on the environment. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rafai reports from Accra.
Mariama Salifu sells charcoal for a living. It's been her job for more than 20 years.
I'm able to pay my children's school fees by selling charcoal. It helps me in taking good care of my family and their needs.
In Ghana, more than 60% of households use fuel wood, including charcoal, for cooking, according to the government's data. Charcoal and fuel wood produce high levels of pollution, which affects people's health and environment. But many people like Zubaira Munifa, who uses charcoal for her catering business, say they can't switch to cleaner energy like liquefied petroleum gas because it is more expensive.
Using gas can help reduce cutting down trees, but unlike charcoal, gas is extremely dangerous to use for cooking.
While millions of people in sub-Saharan Africa rely on charcoal for cooking, experts say it contributes to climate change because trees are chopped and burnt to make it. These sacks of charcoal are largely produced in the northern parts of Ghana and transported to Accra and other parts of Ghana. Mariama says she receives about 200 sacks of charcoal every month. Environmental campaigners want the government to provide subsidy on cleaner energy sources like LPG so people cut down on the use of fuel wood and charcoal. But that could also affect Mariama's source of income.
We have to plant new trees when we cut old ones and use them for charcoal. I think this will help save the environment.
While Kenya has banned the use of charcoal, Ghana is not looking to take that step as yet. Experts say a ban on charcoal and fuel wood could affect many livelihoods.
We need to find a balance as a country, because as a developing country, we may not necessarily have the luxury of other energy sources. There are a lot of innovative solutions that have come up over the years. The challenge with fuel wood and greenhouse gas emissions is the ability to combust the wood fully to reduce the emissions. Now, some innovations include the improved cook stove. The improved cook stoves ensure that when we use wood fuel, including charcoal, they are able to burn efficiently and reduce the amount of emissions.
Mariama Salifu agrees. She says a more efficient production and use of charcoal can help sustain her business while also protecting the environment from excessive pollution. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
And we are not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Here's a peek at the headlines. In sports, we take a look at how an amputee uses golf to deal with trauma and anxiety.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference. How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome into Sport on Africa Live. Thanks for joining us. 17 million South Africans suffer from some kind of mental disorder, which has worsened through the COVID-19 pandemic. A South African amputee has found a way to deal with trauma and anxiety by channeling his energy into something he loves. Dion Fondenkirk, through the South African Disabled Golf Association, SADGA, took up golf, and here is his story.
I was working in Botswana and I was on my way back from Maun to Francistown, and a truck hit my car from the front. My arm got caught in the seat belt and got mangled. And because of all the blood loss, They had to amputate right there and then. When they tell you they're going to amputate, to lose your dominant right hand is quite crazy because you can't write, you can't do most of the things. I have needles and pins 24/7, and so does most amputees. And it gets crazy that you start crying. You need to then train your brain to overcome the pain. Sometimes when you feel alone, or when you start resting and thoughts comes back and you think about your life. In the beginning, yes, it happened more. But as life goes on, 13 years since the accident, you learn to deal with things like that. When you're playing golf, you get to be in the open air. When you walk, you actually get exercise. And that, to me, has helped me a lot. I play at least once a week, or mostly I try and play twice a week. And it's training your brain to tell your brain, yes, you can do it. If it's a bad shot, you need to forget about it, carry on to the next shot. We play at least once a month, us as a group in Gauteng, in this province. And then each province has a regional day. So when you play with people with disability, they also motivate you to be better. This is the first year that I've actually competed in the SATCA Open. So we played Durban, KwaZulu-Natal, and then we played Cape Town, and then we played Utenhage. We're playing Swartkops. Best mechanism to cope is not to go and sit down and think about what's wrong. You must think positively.
Well, what an inspiring story. That is the substantial power of